Ladies and gentlemen, this is L24 coming to you live from Algiers and to the headlines. Stressing that it could open up opportunities to launch projects in the field of nuclear energy, the International Atomic Energy Agency considers the African continent as the future of energy in the world. New truce between Sudan's warring generals takes effect on Sunday after intense fighting that saw deadly airstrikes in the capital, Khartoum. In the Middle East, in one of the most contentious issues in Palestine, Zionist entity approved legislation to speed up the construction of Zionist settlements in the occupied West Bank. In Europe, Russian presidential spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that the special military operation in Ukraine has virtually turned into a war with the collective West. Hello again and welcome. I'm your host Abdel Rahim Kashar, and those were today's top stories. Starting our news bulletin from Mali, where Malians began voting on Sunday in a referendum on a new constitution for the first bailout since the military came to power 3 years ago. The new draft constitution legitimizes traditional authorities, strengthens the status of multiple national languages, and provides for the establishment of the Senate.
I would also like to salute and thank our defense and security forces, the crucibles of the Mali nation, who watch over our state and our people, and who are the first bastions for safeguarding our sovereignty. I'm convinced that this referendum will pave the way for a new Mali, a strong and efficient Mali serving the well-being of our people. And I would also like to launch an appeal to all Malians, whatever the outcome of the referendum results, to hold hands and form a sacred union around Mali.
Within the same country, Germany rejected Mali's transitional government request that UN peacekeepers leave the country. German Foreign Ministry stated that the request was politically motivated and that Berlin still wanted an orderly withdrawal of its forces by next May. The temporary military authorities in Mali submitted the request on Friday, noting that there is a lack of confidence between the country's authorities and MINUSMA. In Africa, suspected militants have killed about a dozen villagers and wounded several more in the village of Sara, western Burkina Faso. According to security and local sources, 9 bodies were buried last night, but 2 people also died of their wounds later on, making a total of 11 dead. Another security source noted that a search operation had been launched in the area and other regions targeted by the armed groups. The Sahrawi Republic attended the annual celebration of the gathering of governmental organizations held in the municipality of Ivry-sur-Seine in the French capital Paris, represented by a special pavilion supervised by French and Sahrawi activists and jurists who defend the justice of the Sahrawi cause, including civil society activities to advertise the Sahrawi issue, including collecting signatures on a list calling to release Sahrawi political detainees in the Moroccan occupation prisons. The Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General for Support in Libya, Abdullah Batili, in a statement confirmed the UN mission's adherence to the option of holding elections in the country. Batili was received by the head of the Commission, Imad Sayah, quoted the UN envoy praising the level of preparations to accompany the UN efforts to hold the elections. The same source stated that meeting which falls within the framework of the international support provided to the Commission through the United Nations institutions and bodies working in the field of supporting elections. In Libya still, the head of the Libyan government of national unity, Abdelhamid Dbeiba, expressed on Friday his conviction that the Libyans could overcome obstacles put an end to wars and achieve a true constitution. Dbeiba stressed that the parliamentary elections in Libya are a step toward the presidency and the creation of the state's institutions.
We
are ready to overcome all the obstacles we face, to end the wars, to restore stability, and engage in a true constitution for this people. We all vote yes and no, and we move towards our choice and the choice of all Libyans. There is no other solution.
Coming back to our country, the 54th edition of the Algiers International Fair is witnessing a record foreign participation with 30 countries taking part, including 28 countries participating with an official pavilion. The fair, which begins next Tuesday and continues until the 25th of this month, is marked by the wide participation of Italy, the guest of honor of this season. The International Atomic Energy Agency considers the African continent as the future of energy in the world, stressing that it could open up opportunities to launch projects in the field of nuclear energy for peaceful purposes to achieve sustainable development and promote scientific progress. Mohamed Khatou.
Speaking on behalf of the Minister of Energy and Mines, Mohamed Arqab, at the opening of the 34th meeting of the African Regional Cooperative Agreement for Research, Development and Training related to nuclear science and technology, AFRA, which is being held from June 18 to 22 in Algiers, the Secretary General of the Ministry, Abdelkarim Awisi, stressed the need to pool efforts and strengthen cooperation among the countries of the region to use nuclear technologies and sciences for peaceful purposes.
The global crisis world has gone through over the last years made it clear that the time has come to work together with the countries of the region to support and enhance cooperation in the use of nuclear science and technology for the sustainable social and economic development of the region.
For his part, the Deputy Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Huwa Liu, indicated that his agency is committed to sharing know-how, providing training and building capacity of African partners in the field of nuclear technology.
Africa is one of the important partners with IAEA in the nuclear areas. Africa is the future, especially for our young generation, to get more training and more capacity building in the nuclear areas, because Africa needs more energy supply, more public health support, need the good health for the population, and also agriculture and the fresh water as well. So IAEA is a professional international organization, can work in these areas.
Algeria's large experience in the field of nuclear energy and its will to expand it to other African member states was highlighted by the Director of International Cooperation at the Algerian Atomic Energy Commission.
Algeria has a large experience in nuclear energy, more than 40 years. We are contributing to expanding these techniques in African countries.
The African continent is moving towards integrating peaceful nuclear energy into the energy mix. Despite the lack of funding and the lack of technical experience, it remains, however, a fertile ground for expertise and technology for the peaceful use of nuclear energy with the aim of achieving sustainable economic and social development.
The French Minister of Interior Gérald Darmanin and his German counterpart Nancy Faeser arrived in Tunisia for a visit that will last until Monday. The visit comes a few days after the European Union reached a new agreement on refugees, which includes steps to speed up the return of migrants to their countries of origin or countries including Tunisia. The agreement was followed by a visit by Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and her Dutch counterpart Mark Rutte and European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen to Tunisia, which Brussels considers a gateway for illegal immigration for Africa to Europe. Tunisia strongly condemned the storming of its ambassador's residence in the Sudanese capital Khartoum by armed individuals. The Tunisian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement that the residence was looted and its contents tampered with. The Tunisian diplomacy urged to track down the perpetrators and hold them accountable, and also reiterated its firm position for an immediate end to the fighting in Sudan and the supreme interests of the brotherly Sudanese people. A new truce in Sudan to effect on Sunday morning after the army and the rapid support forces agreed on a 3-day ceasefire. The announcement of the new truce comes on a day that witnessed an escalation in clashes which resulted in the death of at least 17 civilians in south of the capital.
Moments of calm followed the new truce in Sudan after the two Sudanese clashing parties agreed to sign a 72-hour ceasefire agreement under the mediation of Saudi Arabia and the United States. The truce started on Sunday after battles and airstrikes overnight. At least 17 civilians were killed, including children and women, and 25 homes were destroyed on the truce eve in South Khartoum. According to a joint statement issued by Saudi Arabia and the United States, the warring sides agreed to refrain from seeking military advantage and initiating mutual attacks during the ceasefire. They also agreed to allow delivery of humanitarian assistance throughout the country as the situation remains dire for residents in the embattled regions.
I live in the city of Omdurman, where there is no water or electricity supply. Healthcare is also poor here. Most of the sick are not being treated, and many pharmacies have been looted. Almost all the hospitals and schools here are closed.
Based on UN data, more than half of the population is in need of humanitarian assistance in Sudan, requiring some $3 billion in funding until the end of the year. The UN has also appealed for nearly $500 million to curb the refugee crisis caused by the conflict.
And from the African continent, moving to the Middle East, the Zionist occupation entity officially announces the signing of a new law approving the building of new settlement in the West Bank. The law that will allow the construction of more settlements units signed by the Minister of Finance of the occupation entity without obtaining the slightest consensus or political approval. The response quickly came from Palestine Liberation Organization, which decided to boycott the meeting of the Higher Economic Committee, in which it was going to participate with the authorities of the entity this Monday. Now, in Europe, Russia's defense ministry said on Sunday its forces has rappelled a series of Ukrainian attacks across the sections on the front line, where it said Ukraine was pressing most actively in Zaporizhia region. Sofian Kanturi.
The conflict between Russian and Ukrainian forces intensified and caused heavy losses for both sides, especially after Kiev officially announced the start of its counteroffensive against Russian forces on various fronts inside Ukrainian territory. Russian Defense Ministry said on Sunday that around 600 Ukrainian troops were neutralized by Russian forces while repelling Ukraine's attacks in different areas during the past day. According to the same source, Ukraine's daily losses in the southern Donetsk and Zaporizhia areas reached up to 380 troops, 35 tanks, 33 armored infantry carriers, including 2 Bradleys, 38 armored combat vehicles, including a Striker and a D-20 howitzer.
Over the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian armed forces continued their attempts to attack the Zaporizhia, South Donetsk and Donetsk directions. As a result of a complex fire engagement on 4 columns of the Ukrainian armed forces reserves in the area of the settlement of Mala Tokmachka. Zaporizhia region, 9 tanks, 10 infantry fighting vehicles and up to 10 other armored fighting vehicles were destroyed.
Despite heavy losses, Ukrainians are continuing their counterattack, especially after retaking some villages few days ago. Last week, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that the alliance military equipment delivered to Ukraine is making a difference on the battlefield. However, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Sunday that the Russian military operation virtually turns into a Russia-West war.
In fact, the special military operation against Ukraine, against the Kiev regime, was launched to ensure the safety of the people of Donbass. This is correct. Now it's practically a war between Moscow and the collective West.
The conflict in Ukraine doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon, due to the escalation in tensions between the two sides, and Kiev is not aiming to negotiate before Moscow withdraws its forces, while on the other hand the Russians said that the West must stop its supplies to Kiev in a bid to end the war.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov justified Russian President Vladimir Putin's statement about establishing a cordon sanitaire on the territory of Ukraine by expansion of Western operations to arm Kiev.
As the range of weapons delivered to Ukraine expands, so will the buffer zone, the distance that we will have to move Ukrainians away from our territories.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Chinese Foreign Minister on Sunday after arriving in Beijing on a high-stakes diplomatic mission to try to cool exploding U.S.-China tensions. The pair were filmed talking casually as they shook hands in front of photographers. They later had a meeting with the delegations. During his campaign rally in Philadelphia on Saturday, U.S. President Joe Biden asked union workers to support his re-election bid and call for new taxes on the wealthy and corporations. He also said that the number of billionaires in U.S. has risen to about 1,000 and they pay some 8% of their earnings in taxes. Biden also emphasized on economic indicators that are favorable to his record, including a low unemployment rate and a record pace of job growth in his first 2 years in office.
I'm looking forward to this campaign. I want you to know why. Because you've got a story to tell. We've got a story to tell. We've got a record to run on. And most importantly, we're not only changing this country, we're transforming it. Just think back. Remember what it was like when I came to office. We came into office. Remember the mess we inherited. The pandemic was raging. I want you to really think about this. I mean this sincerely. It's not a campaign speech. It's a speech about the future of this country.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has written to his counterparts among the group of G members calling for the African Union to be given full membership of the grouping at its September summit in New Delhi. The proposal was made in line with requests from the Union, which is made up of 55 countries of the African continent. At least 12 people have been killed in Brazil's southern state of Rio Grande do Sul after an extratropical cyclone struck the region on Friday. According to the state's authorities, the same authorities has indicated that the storm caused torrential rains and helicopter searching are underway in flooded neighborhood to find 5 others who have gone missing.
Now it is the time for us to look at the people. Now it is the time for us to protect the people who have been affected, give shelter, assistance, attention to each one of them, to rescue those people who still need rescuing, locate the missing, give assistance for people. Then we will work hard on the reconstruction of these cities.
Now, for more international news, let's follow this roundup by Selma Nasib.
A passenger ferry carrying 120 passengers and crew members caught fire off the coast of the central Philippines on Sunday. Visuals from the Philippine Coast Guard show parts of the ferry engulfed in flames, while its personnel tried to hose down the fires. Luckily, all passengers on board have been accounted for and no casualties were reported. At least 96 people have died in 2 of India's most populous states over the last several days, with swaths of the country reeling from a sweltering heat wave. Authorities found out most of those who passed away were over 60 years old and had pre-existing health conditions, which may have been exacerbated by the intense heat. At least 20 people were shot at the Juneteenth celebration outside Chicago shortly after midnight on Sunday. The celebration attracted a large group of people that had gathered at a parking lot in Willowbrook, Illinois. DuPage County Sheriff's Deputy Chief Eric Swanson said authorities are still investigating the motive and number of shooters involved. The river Derwent in the Lake District is now completely dry in some stretches, including when it runs through the village of Seathwaite, which is one of the wettest places in England. The National Trust has been partnering with the West Cumbria Rivers Trust to find restoration strategies to help mitigate the effects of climate change in the Derwent catchment.
Now in sport, the Algerian national football team defeated Uganda with 2-1 in the game that was held in Japoma Stadium in Cameroon with the 5th round of the African Cup of Nations qualifiers. A former player of ESS Sétif, Mohamed Amoura, scored the first goal for the Desert Warriors in the 42nd minute as a closure for the first half. Entering the second half, the same player, Mohamed Amoura, kept up his solid performance and scored the second goal in the 66th minute. Before the end whistle, Uganda managed to score their only goal at the 88th minute, closing the game with a score of 2-1 in favor of the Greens. This result reinforced Algeria's lead in Group 6 with 15 points, while Uganda balance stopped at the 4th point in the 3rd place. Now, still in sport, the Tunisian national football team received a warm welcome to the state of Annaba, east of Algeria, after its arrival at Rabah Bitat International Airport in an anticipation of the friendly game that will be hosted in Annaba Stadium named 19 May, next Tuesday against Jamal Belmadi's Cubs. It's worth noting that Riyad Mahrez and his teammates will land in Annaba in a couple hours from now, coming from Cameroon after beating Uganda 2-1 in the AFCON 2023 qualifiers. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself. Good night.